Well, I've taken the Fusee movement out of the case. This is the clock that dropped to the floor, fell off its hook, and the wooden case is now ready for some gluing up. But there is more wrong with the clock than I thought. There's the Fusee movement and the pendulum. The pendulum suspension spring is okay, actually. It's all in one bit, but where it goes into the brass thing at the top, the hole where the pin used to go through has gone through, so it no longer holds and it would just flick out. You can see where it's broken, so I've got to make a new hole or repair that hole so that we can reuse the suspension spring. So that's the pendulum. But when I looked at the movement itself, I tried winding it up to see what was wrong, but the first wheel here, is all loose. And what's happened, the arbor has broken at the end, so it's all loose. So the main wheel needs a new end put on the arbor. It goes in there. So lovely movement, but needing a bit of work. Right, so before we strip this clock down, let's just find out a bit more about it. It's given to me by a lady in Edinburgh. She didn't want it anymore. It's a Fusee clock, made in Edinburgh, a W. Philip. I've looked at them in history books and I can't actually see that there was a W. Philip who was a clock maker, but W. Philip might have been the name of the jewellers where the clock was originally built. I don't know, but anyway, it's a Fusee clock. And what is a Fusee clock? Well, up to now, all the clocks I've worked on the videos have had a traditional mainspring. In fact, if I look here, I've got an old Smith's Enfield movement, and you see it's got a mainspring here which drives the movement, and the mainspring has a gear here which drives the movement directly, and that's great. But for greater accuracy, the trouble with this type of movement is that when the spring is fully wound, then you've got the maximum power going to the movement, but as it unwinds, it's going to get less power, and therefore the clock is going to lose time. So over, say, a week of winding, that's not very accurate. So the Fusee mechanism is slightly different. There's our mainspring here, but there's no gear on that. Instead, we've got in this case, it's a steel wire that goes from the mainspring to this here, which is the Fusee, which is a wound. It's got a winding on it, and the gear in here is at this end, and you wind the clock up. You wind the clock up via the Fusee, and as you wind the clock, that will will pull the wire from the Fusee and wrap it round the cone here. until you get to the end. And so when the clock is working and ticking, you can see it's like a bicycle gear, really. It governs the amount of power that's coming from the mainspring, and so when it's fully wound, you've got the least power coming in, but as it unwinds, then you get more power coming to it. So Fusee clocks, you'll see them advertised, mainly post office clocks, the old school clocks, and clocks which have greater accuracy. They're more expensive movements. As you can see, this Fusee itself is made out of solid brass, so that's an expensive item to make, so much more accurate. And so this is the first one I've worked on, so as we go through it, I'll explain how you unwind it, take it apart, and then how to put it back together again later. So the first thing we'll do is remove the front face here. I've taken the hands off already, and the front face is held on by 3 pins, which are held by a taper pin. Now 2 of the pins at the bottom were actually missing, so it's held on by the one taper pin at the top. I can take off there, and then that will now come away. That's the 3 posts. Right, so here we are a couple of days later. As you can see, I've removed the front face of the Fusee clock, and you can see here the hour and minute wheels, and the winding key goes on there, and you're essentially winding the Fusee, which has a click spring in it, you can hear here, and the Fusee is connected to the mainspring via, in this case, a steel wire. But you'll notice the mainspring also has a click spring here. But to unwind the clock, or Fusee clock, you unwind the Fusee. You don't, whatever you do, unwind the mainspring here. You unwind the cord or the chain from the Fusee first, and that's what's happened here. As you can see, in this instance we have a loose center arbor here where the pinion has broken off the end, which we have to fix. So this is unwound anyway. If it wasn't unwound, the way and everything was okay on this clock, to unwind a Fusee clock, the way you do it is unwind the Fusee, and you do that by inserting a bit of pegwood through the gears to stop them moving, and then you remove the pallet cock and the pallet. Then you can remove the bit of pegwood and it will start to unwind. You'll see the mainspring start to pull the cable from the Fusee, and it will start to wind onto the mainspring outer barrel, as you can see here. But when it's totally unwound, which in this case it is, there is still tension on this mechanism, so we can't take the plates off yet. We have to now remove the tension in the mainspring. When you set up a Fusee clock, you put a bit of tension on the cable here, so when it's fully unwound, the cable's not flapping about. So you put We'll have to check what this one is, but I think it's about a quarter of a turn on the mainspring barrel there to get some tension in there, just to take the slack off the cable. So in this case, we need to now take the tension off the mainspring here. So I'll just put that like that. So I have my trusty mainspring unwinder. And somewhere here, a screwdriver will loosen the click slightly. So bend it, and let's see, 1 tooth, 2 tooth, 3 tooth, 4 tooth, 5 tooth, 6 tooth, 7 tooth, 8 tooth, 9 tooth, 10, 11, 12. It's about 1 turn, I would say. And that's it. That's taken all the tension now off the mainspring, so we should be able to go ahead now and remove the parts of this clock. So I think we'll start off by removing the pallet cock and pallet. Sure. That was tough. Can't put these bits in. 1, 2. The pallet cock has 2 pins that go through into the plate, so I just have to carefully move that, just gently lift it up. There. See the 2 pins there that hold it in place with the 2 screws. Now we should be able to lift this out. Aha. Go this way. There we go. Wiggle it through the hole. And there's the pallet fork. Here's the pallet fork. Right, I'm glad that got off, because that's always a weak point. Right, next we can remove these items here. just put the screw loosely back in there. And wheel cock. And these will come off. All looks good, no sign of any damage there. Someone's been in here before. You can tell the top of the screw heads has been chewed. I'll try and dress those up a bit before we reassemble it. Back in there. That comes off. And then we have the clutch spring underneath. Yeah, that's that. Right, just remove the click and click spring. Remove the tapered pin that's holding the click spring. We can now remove the top plate, which is held on by 4 taper pins, of which one is missing, I notice. We'll take the other 3 out. Right. 2. Right, and then we can slowly raise the plate. The escape wheel is hanging onto the escape wheel is actually hanging on. Pretty gungy. So here we have the top plate removed, and what we saw when we started to take this apart was this center arbor. And the arbor pinion has broken off there. I'll just take a quick photo of that and then we'll put it all back together. Okay then, let's take a look at this broken center arbor. Just take these wheels out. escape wheel. Here we have the fusee and mainspring with the steel wire attached. Here is the centre wheel. As you can see, the arbor point is broken off. We'll probably find a little pointy stick. There you can see the broken arbor still in the hole. Just push that out. As you can see, there's the pivot that has come off the broken off the arbor. Right, I've just got to show you this. I've got to put this into the lathe and turn it so I can drill a hole dead center of the arbor there. So how do I mount that into the lathe so that it is dead center? Here's my steel, my blue steel rod is just under 1 millimeter in diameter, so that will do nicely. So what you do, you put the disc chuck into its holder and you wind it tight by the collet. I can get it. Like that. Put your wheel in the centre so it's on one of the rings and carry on tightening it. And that will close the ring until it's absolutely tight, and there we are. That now is tightly held by the chuck and it is dead center there, so I can now come in with my drill and drill a hole. Fantastic, eh? It's a small center drill. Right, that's the centre drill. Just made a small hole. Right, we'll start with a drill which is 0.83 diameter. Slide towards. Slide towards. Right, this is going to have to be very, very careful how I do this thing. We'll try it at full speed, but I think it's going to break the drill maybe. I think we find this probably isn't quite wide enough. Right, I have a 1mm drill here. I'm going to put it in a pin chuck. Like so. And then that can go and that can go into the tailstock vise. There we go. There it is, ready to go. So let's drill that out, and then we should be pretty much there. I think I've drilled a hole which is about 8 mils so deep. Let's just check that. You can see the mark on there. Five and a half mil deep hole. I think that should be enough. See if the steel bar will go in there, which it does. That goes in there nicely. So I've now placed the pivot end into the hole and used a bit of Loctite to hold it in place. I'll let that dry, then I can just file it to shape. Right, I've now put a new pivot on the center wheel here, and now I have to replace the bush. You can probably see here where the pivot used to go in there, and you can see people in the past have scraped away at that with a file, made a right mess. But I'm going to take that old bush out and put in a new one, and then ream it to size. So I'm going to put that on there. And in here I have a staking set, and I'm going to choose one of these as a small drift. Right, choose one of these to use it as a small drift. With a light tap of a hammer. Right, here we go again. Got a second bush to put in. Just slightly tap it in. Finish it off. One repaired centre wheel. Right, now we come to the mainspring and the fusee. As you remember, the two are linked by a steel wire in this case, and some people say steel wire can fray and eventually break, and also it's a lot tougher than normal gut line that used to be put on, and it can wear the fusee. But when I look at the fusee, there are no wear marks on there. Also, the steel braid is okay, it's not frayed at all in any cases. And where it goes into the mainspring here, and let's just have a look inside the mainspring now. We just flip the top off, and there you see the mainspring. It's been heavily oiled by the last service, which I see as some inscribed on the bottom of the mainspring here that it was 1989 that it was done. But that mainspring actually looks lubricated and okay, so I'm going to leave it in there. And the steel braid goes in through the two holes here, around and round, and it's wrapped so that it's held tight like that. So I'm happy with that side. Just need to clean it all up a bit. And on the fusee side, the cable goes inside it. As you can see, this has got a ratchet on it. So let's just have a look at that, what's inside here. So there's a brass plate here which is held on by a small screw. So just take that off, push that out and off, and this outer cover comes off. And inside here you'll see a small bit of bent wire, a spring essentially, which is held at that end, and that flicks against the ratchet here on the teeth, on this gear tooth here. So that's the ratchet mechanism inside the Fusee, and the steel wire goes through here. Let's have a look. It goes underneath this. Well, let's take it off and see. Take the ratchet away, and the internal wheel is held on 2 screws. Two long screws. There we are. There's the cog. As you can see there, the steel wire comes in through a hole and it's tied in place on a knot here. So that's the Fusee. I'll clean this up and then we can put it all back together again. But as I say, I'm going to leave this steel wire on here. I had actually bought some gut line as a replacement, but I think I'm going to save that for another day, because I can't see anything wrong with that steel Fusee wire. And I say there's no wear, and there's no wear on the wire itself, so I think that's going to be okay. Right, I'll clean it all up and then we'll get ready to put it back together. So see you shortly. Okay, so all the components have now been cleaned, ready for reassembly. And what I have here in front of you is the Fusee and the mainspring and the steel wire that connects the two together. But just looking at the Fusee more closely, you'll see at the end of the coil there is a tab, and what that's for, it's to stop you overwinding the clock. So when the Fusee is attached in the plate like that, and you start to wind the clock, and you see the steel wire will start to wrap itself around the Fusee, and it will work its way down until it hits this spring lever here, and as you continue to wind the clock, that spring lever will be pushed by the wire towards the locking plate until you get to the point, it's actually this way, when you're winding, that will eventually get to the point where the wire gets to the end of the Fusee, and as you continue to wind, that Fusee will hit that lock like that, and then it won't wind any further. So that's the Fusee fully locked. You'll see this better when it's reassembled, but that is the purpose of this spring lever here, which is attached on the plate here. So what we want to do first is we're going to wind this spring. We're going to wind this cable around the Fusee to aid reassembly. So we'll do that now. you could wind the coil of wire around the mainspring and on assembly let it wrap round the fusee when you're winding, but I'm going to try it this way. So wind it round the coil, trying to keep it taut. Trying to unwind it. Carry on. Bit fiddly. You can see it's like a spiral groove machined into the fusee. Carry on winding. I guess you know the point of the fusee is here. It's like a gear where you've got least power at the wide end, and as the mainspring unwinds, the power in the spring reduces, and so the gearing here increases as this gets smaller. We're getting towards the end now. This is getting towards the fully wound position. I think it's there. Now what I'm going to do, it doesn't unravel, I'm going to put a bit of tape around it, because otherwise it's going to just undo. Just want to keep it in place while we assemble it in the clock. See how successful that'll be. There. Now we can reassemble. So I'll reassemble the clock. Oh no. I'll reassemble the clock and come back to you once I've wound this up again. Right. There we have it. A little bit Heath Robinson, but I'm going to now assemble this into the clock, and I'll come back to you when I've got to that stage. As you can see, I've temporarily put this together, and this steel wire is a nightmare. It's all unwound and it's just not wanting to stick to that fusee. So I think I'm going to try the other way of actually winding the wire around the mainspring. I might be able to attach it more easily that way as well. So I'm going to take it all apart and do that again. What a nightmare. See the mess? I'm never going to unwind that now. So lesson learned, let's do it the other way. As I say, I think if that was a chain, it wouldn't have the same amount of spring in it and it would stay more in place. But with a wire, it doesn't work. Wrapping it around the fusee first. Here we go again. We've now got the fusee wire wrapped round the mainspring barrel, and we're going to wind it onto the fusee. So carefully does it. What I should really do is put a bit of pegwood in the movement. Just stop it turning. What I should do is just put a bit of pegwood in the fusee. Just a bit of pegwood in there to stop it from turning. Winding it up. there we are, that's it, fully wound onto there. And now we will let it unwind naturally onto the barrel, and we do that just by removing the pegwood. Move the pegwood. And let it slowly unwind. This will take a fair bit of time. So there we have it, pretty much unwound. Now what we're going to do is put probably about half a turn to a turn, probably about half a turn on the mainspring now to make sure. Let's actually get it completely unwound. Let's just make sure it's completely unwound first. Right, at that point, we're now going to turn this over and we're going to give this about half a turn, so there to there. And tighten this up. So let's put a bit of tension on that. So I think now winding on nicely now. See the cable now just hitting the lever and moves it towards the stop. Carry on winding. One more turn maybe. And there we are. It's now locked. And that's how the overwinding mechanism works. That's great. So that's the winding mechanism now up and running again. All we've got to do now is fit the hour and minute hands, and then we can reassemble the pallet fork assembly, and then we should have a movement ready to go back into the case. Goes on there like that. Sure it's nice and tight. Yep. Pin in there. Okay. Now I should drill another hole below the hole that's there. That was the broken hole. So we'll put another hole in below it and fit that into the new hole so it can't pull out. New hole. So there we have it, ticking away nicely. I'll leave that on test now for a day or so, check that everything's okay, and then we'll put it back in the case. I just need to do a bit of woodworker repairs to the case with some glue, and I'll do that offline, but next shot should be it working in the case. Well, I've finished gluing the broken pieces of the case together again, and that's been drying nicely. Just taped the pieces that have come loose together to hold it in place, so that's done. Now what I want to do is I want to put in the new glass in the brass frame here, and that's held on with 3 screws. So I think for fitting in the new glass it would be best to take this off. That's very nice. So take that away. Let's just get this out of the way. Right, the broken glass that was in here before was held in place with, it looked like a chalky substance, but it was very firmly attached. But I managed just with a screwdriver to be able to chisel away at the chalk, and it came away nicely, which allowed me to move the glass pieces. So you're left with the brass frame. There's a couple of small nails, one there, one there, which will just hold the new bit of glass in place. So this chalky substance, I realised, was Plaster of Paris, which was used a lot on the manufacture of clocks, for putting in glass onto the surrounds, but it was also used on mantel clock surrounds, like the pillars and embellishments on the cases of these old-fashioned mantel clocks were held in place with plaster of Paris. And so I'd had quite a few suggestions from my viewers to use anything from putty, window putty, through to plasticine, but I think I'm going to have a go at using plaster of Paris. Never used it before, but it was to keep it the traditional way that the clocks were originally assembled. So I purchased some plaster of Paris, dirt cheap, a couple of pounds a bag, and we just add it to water, mix it up, and then embed the glass into there. So that's what I'm going to do. Never used it before, so you're going to be watching with me as I attempt to do this, hopefully fairly tidily. So you're going to be here with me to watch me use this stuff for the first time. So you can join me here on using plaster of Paris for the first time. Let's see how easy it is to use. So I'm going to mix it in a bowl, and looking online, the way to do it, you put the water in first and add the plaster of Paris to the water. I think the idea is it stops lumps from forming as it's being stirred up, because this is also used for making molds for jewellery and things, so you need a nice consistency. And I think I'm going to mix it to a texture which is not too runny, just enough to be able to bed onto the brass plate. So before I mix it up, here's the glass, replacement glass piece, and that'll go like that. So there we go. So I think it's a case of pasting it in here, laying the glass in, and then just putting a coat around the top and then allowing it to set. Apparently it hardens quite quickly, so I have to move fairly quickly, I think, but we'll see. So we go. Apparently quite a bit of heat given off when this is mixed with water, and it can be quite damaging to the hands. Well, I've got fairly tough hands, so I'm going to try it without the gloves, but I'll see whether I'll regret that later on. Okay. So the secret apparently is to add the water first. I think I'm just going to use a screwdriver, end of a screwdriver, to mix it and apply. It's going to be messy, isn't it? Let's go and get a cover for the bench. Water, Plaster of Paris, let's go, knife. Okay. Mix this in. So go to the bottom. Going to the bottom and being absorbed by the I've got far too much water in here. Dissolves very quickly. It's more the consistency of a porridge now. I think we really want it a bit thicker than that. I think I've made enough to do 3 clocks. There we go. It's starting to thicken up now. I want it to sort of be a sort of consistency of a plasticine or putty, I guess. Be easier to spread onto the bezel. Let it go everywhere. Note to self, don't make so much next time. I have the same problem when I'm making spaghetti. I always make too much. A bit more than that. Now it's thickening up. For those of you just tuning in, no, this isn't a cookery show. I love my food and I enjoy cooking, but I certainly don't want to be showing other people how to do it. I'd be closed down in an instant. I'll leave it to the experts. Okay, I'm going to have a go at that. So I'm going to put a coating underneath. A bit easier in the area here. Okay. Now let's put the glass in. Nothing like this. This is amazing. I'm pretty much ready for the spike. This is taking out really quickly. I'm going to stretch around the knife just to get it off. I think that's what I do. I'm just going to miss. This is I'm going to now. Just a minute, then my thumb. It's very fast now. This thing is setting fast. That's almost flat now. Well, not the neatest of jobs, I guess. I'm sure I'm not going to win any prizes for presentation, but displaying the noble art of Plaster of Paris in, but and just to let you know, that is rock solid. I'll come back when it's all finished. Well, the clock's finally put together and back up on the wall behind me, and it's ticking away nicely. Well, one thing I've learned from this exercise is make sure you've got your wall clock fixed securely to the wall, because if it happens to come down just like mine did, you're in a whole world of broke. We had a center wheel arbor pin that had broken, a pendulum mount had broke, the glass lens broke, and the wooden casing itself also fractured and broke. So a lot of work to put it right, but it was worth it, because these Fusee clocks, they're lovely things to look at, and they tick away nicely and they keep really good time. Well, I've had some fun with Plaster of Paris. Looked a bit messy when I was doing it, but it's actually not too bad to work with. You smooth it on with your fingers, and you can actually mold it into shape with your fingers, and you can scrape the surplus areas off with your fingers, so you get quite a nice finish in the end. And the beauty of it is that if we ever had to take that glass out again, if it unfortunately broke again, we could easily do so, because the Plaster of Paris, it just chips away nicely. So pleased to have used what was a traditional method for putting the glass into cases, and I'll certainly keep it in my drawer to use for any other clocks we have in future. So we have got a few more clocks lined up now. I'm hoping to be able to spend a lot more time on clocks soon. I'm pleased to say I'm actually going to be retiring from my job in 6 weeks time, which will give me more time at home to be able to play in the workshop. So look forward to seeing you soon with some more videos to perhaps up my frequency of getting them on YouTube to see. So again, I've got to say thank you very much for all the new subscribers I had since the last clock, when we took this of the last video when we took this clock down, and great to see we're over 800 subscribers now, so that's great news for me, and gives me a good boost to keep on going. And I'm hoping you're liking the videos. Anything you want to ask me about other clocks to try, repair, or please do leave me a comment, and I'll be pleased to answer. Okay, great to see you all, and hopefully we'll see you soon on the next video. So bye for now.